The Rivera family history is told, explaining that its matriarch Imelda was the wife of a musician who left her and her daughter Coco to pursue a career in music. To support both of them, she turned to shoemaking, which became the family business, and began a tradition which to this day bans music in the Riveras. Her great-great-grandson, 12-year-old Miguel, lives with Coco, who is his elderly great-grandmother, and the rest of her descendants in the small, fictional Mexican village of Santa Cecilia. He secretly dreams of becoming a musician like his idol, the late Ernesto de la Cruz, a popular singer and film star who died in a performance when a stage worker accidentally dropped a giant bell on him. However, Miguel keeps a secret hideout with many memorabilia from de la Cruz, and he is everyday discouraged by his family about becoming a musician. When Miguel tries to enter a talent show for the Day of the Dead, his Abuelita destroys his guitar when he tried to convince her to see him play. With his dream crushed, Miguel runs off to the talent show to perform anyway. While finding a guitar to use, Miguel then discovers something hidden in the photo of Imelda, taken with her husband and an infant Coco. At the center of the family ofrenda, her husband, whose face is ripped out, was holding the guitar famously used by Ernesto. Concluding that he is Ernesto's great-great-grandson, Miguel is emboldened to steal the musician's guitar from his mausoleum to use in the show. But in doing so, he plays a magic chord and finds that he is no longer visible or tangible to living people except Dante, a street dog he has befriended. Instead, he can see his skeletal dead relatives, who are visiting the land of the living on this holiday. And they can see him. They believe this is related to Imelda's inability to cross the bridge to the world of the living, and take Miguel to land of the dead to solve the puzzle. They learn that Imelda cannot cross because Miguel removed her portrait from the ofrenda. Furthermore, Miguel has to be restored to the land of the living before sunrise, or he will become one of the dead. The curse from the Riveras, which sent him to this plane of existence, can be undone by the blessing of a family member such as Imelda. She gave Miguel her blessing with the condition of abandon his musical ambitions. Just as he received the blessing, Miguel disobeyed the condition and was sent back with Imelda, which demands him to accept her conditions. But Miguel refuses and escapes to search for Ernesto, figuring he can get a blessing from that ancestor with no such conditions. Miguel encounters Hector, a down-on-his-luck skeleton who says he once played with Ernesto and died eating a chorizo, and offers to take Miguel to him in exchange for a favor of putting his picture on an ofrenda so he can cross the flower bridge to see his daughter, which he agrees. To make the plan work, Hector paints Miguel's face to disguise as a skeleton and goes for a guitar from his friend Chicharon, who is fading because he has no remaining living relatives to remember him. Chicharon disappears from the land of the dead soon after, and Miguel realizes Hector is in danger of being forgotten by the living, and he wants Miguel to take his photo back to his world so Hector can use it to visit his daughter one last time before she forgets him. Imelda and the dead Riveras are determined to find Miguel, so she sends her winged jaguar Lebrige Pepita to find him. Miguel and Hector manage to meet Frida Kahlo, who tells them they can get to meet Ernesto if they win a talent show to be his opening act. Hector is able to get a guitar from one of his neighbors, none of whom really have family to go home to. Soon they arrive at the contest. Miguel decides to play Remember Me, but after seeing the amount of performers who are also singing that song, he decides on Un Poco Loco. At first Miguel is nervous, but he manages to win the contest. But then Pepita and the Riveras find him and he has to escape. And Hector is now angry that Miguel lied to him that Ernesto was his only relative and he could have put his photo earlier. Just as Miguel is cornered by Imelda and Pepita, he argues that he won't accept her blessing if she won't let him do something he loves deeply, and she wouldn't understand how being a musician is. But she proves him wrong by singing a ranchero ballad. She tells him that she did love music and whenever her husband played it was all she needed. But after they had Coco, their daughter became more important than music. Imelda again tries to manipulate with Miguel, who refuses and runs off, feeling that his family will never support his passion. Although it turns out that Hector is actually no longer on speaking terms with Ernesto, Miguel manages to get into the singer's lavish party with his help. Miguel introduces himself to Ernesto, who cheerfully welcomes him as his great-great-grandson. The two bond at the party and playing together, but just as Ernesto is about to give him his blessing, Hector gets into the party and confronts Miguel, feeling betrayed that the boy has reneged on their deal. In the confrontation, Miguel points out a detail that prompts Hector to realize that his death had not been accidental, with a scene from one of Ernesto's movies. Miguel figures out that Ernesto and Hector used to be partners in the music industry. But Hector wanted to go back to his family. But Ernesto was not a songwriter and couldn't work without his songs, so Ernesto did the unthinkable. He poisoned Hector's tequila. After Hector's death, Ernesto used his songs and his guitar to become famous. Taking Hector's portrait, Ernesto betrays Hector and Miguel and puts them in a cenote pit. In the cenote, Miguel tells Hector he was right and Miguel was worried that he should have listened to his family and that he couldn't trust Ernesto. But as Hector starts to fade, he tells Miguel that Coco is starting to forget him. Miguel shows the picture he took from the ofrenda, and the two realize that Miguel's great-great-grandfather is Hector. Upon knowing that Coco is dying, Hector will fade if she dies, as she is the only living relative that still remembers him. As he also told Miguel that he wrote the song Remember Me not for the world, but for Coco, with the help of Pepita and Dante, who turns out to be a spirit guide. Imelda and the other dead Riveras find them. Although Miguel explains the circumstances of Hector's death, Imelda still won't forgive him but agrees to help save Hector. To retrieve Hector's portrait from Ernesto, they infiltrate his sunrise concert with the aid of Frida. The plan fails when Ernesto recognizes them and tries to steal the picture while he sings La Llorona with Imelda. But Ernesto is exposed to his fans as a fraud, thief, traitor, and murderer when the family secretly broadcasts his true colors to the audience and the orchestra, and is knocked into the air by Pepita and gets crushed by a bell from a bell tower, echoing his first death. As the sun rises, Hector begins to disappear. To save him, Imelda blesses Miguel without conditions, and he rushes to Coco's side. After failing to help Mama Coco remember, a tearful Miguel is comforted by Luisa and Enrique, consoling that they are together now. Using Hector's old guitar, Miguel sings Remember Me, a song that Hector used to sing to Coco during her childhood, which sparks her memory and revitalizes her. She retrieves from a bundle of mementos the missing part of the photo from the ofrenda, with Hector's face. With Coco's support, Miguel's family reconciles with him and accept music into their household. 1 year later, Miguel proudly presents the family ofrenda, which now features Hector and a photo of the recently deceased Coco. To his new baby sister, Miguel's revelations about Ernesto have left him to be condemned by the world of the living, who now honor Hector in his place and his legacy. In the land of the dead, Hector and Imelda reunite with Coco, then cross the bridge to see their living family, including Miguel, who sings and plays the guitar with his cousins who also became musicians for the living and deceased Riveras.